Welcome, dear dreamer. As you settle beneath your blanket, allow your body to soften with every breath. Inhale deeply through your nose and exhale slowly through your lips. Feel the calm rise within you, like a gentle tide washing over the shore of your mind. The world outside can rest for a while. This is your time to drift, to dream, and to wander softly into a story woven from peace and starlight. Whispers of the moonlit harbor. The harbor was always quieter at night, but on evenings when the moon rose full and silver over the water, a deeper hush seemed to settle upon the world, as if every tide, every plank of the pier, and every lantern lining the docks understood that something sacred was unfolding. Tonight, that stillness was stronger than usual. A soft wind carried the scent of sea salt and old driftwood, gliding gently across the sleeping town and brushing the surface of the harbor with the faintest touch. Moonlight poured across the water like a shimmering pathway, turning each ripple into a ribbon of moving silver. The fishing boats resting at anchor rocked lazily, their masts creaking in slow rhythmic sighs. Wooden hulls gently tapped against one another, creating tiny, percussive whispers in the darkness, as if exchanging quiet stories of the day's journey. The harbor had always felt alive, but on nights like this, it seemed almost sentient, as though it had something to say. Far along the edge of the pier, the old stone lighthouse stood watch. Its lantern was unlit. No ships sailed this late, and no storms were expected, but the moon replaced its duty. A pale beam swept across rooftops, nets, crates, and ropes, polishing them with a soft glow. Everything looked calmer, older, almost dreamlike. The tide began to rise, nudging the boats a little higher and sending a gentle current toward the deeper waters beyond the breakwater. With it came a sound, faint, melodic, drifting across the surface like a lullaby. It wasn't the cry of seabirds or the sigh of the waves. It was something else, something softer. It was said long ago that the harbor held memories, that places touched by water kept the echoes of those who had lived near them, that if you listened carefully, you could hear them. The voices of old sailors humming sea shanties, children laughing as they chased each other along the pier, vendors calling out the day's catch at sunrise. Even the wind, when it passed between the boats, seemed to carry fragments of forgotten stories. Tonight, those whispers were clearer than ever. Along the western dock, a row of weathered crates cast long shadows across the planks. A faint breeze stirred between them, lifting tiny grains of sand from the gaps in the wood. The sound it made was soft, like a sigh. Then another breeze passed, and another sigh followed, somehow softer, somehow more deliberate. It was as if the harbor was breathing, slowly, gently, calmly. The moon climbed higher, revealing more of its face, and the water responded with a slow, shimmering pulse, a rhythm, a heartbeat beneath the waves. And in that rhythm, the whispers grew clearer. They seemed to rise from beneath the surface, as if the water itself was speaking. Words couldn't be made out, not clearly, but the tone was soothing, like a voice comforting a child, patient, warm, timeless. The kind of voice that made you want to close your eyes and listen forever. Out at the end of the pier, near the posts wrapped in old rope, a lantern hung from an iron hook. No hand had lit it in years, and yet, as the moonlight struck its metal frame, it flickered softly, briefly, as if imagining the glow it once carried. The reflection of that imagined flame danced across the water, tiny and golden, barely more than a memory. And yet the harbor welcomed it, folding the shimmer into its tapestry of light. The tide shifted again. The whispers grew clearer still. A low hum threaded itself through the harbor, a sound like distant singing. The melody was slow and winding, matching the movement of the sea. As the wind carried it, the sound wrapped around the boats, slipped between their masts, brushed over the rooftops of the sleeping town, then drifted out again toward the open horizon. It was a song without words, but full of emotion, full of longing, perhaps, or maybe serenity. It was impossible to tell. The harbor seemed to understand, though, because the water settled further, smoothing itself until it reflected the moon with perfect clarity, like a mirror, like an eye. The whispers softened, becoming more rhythmic, more melodic. It was almost like a lullaby, one sung not to people, but to the harbor itself, guiding it into a deeper sleep. Clouds drifted slowly across the sky, thin and delicate, never daring to fully cover the moon. They passed over rooftops and chimneys, their shadows rippling over the silent marketplace, the shuttered windows, the stacks of fishing nets piled neatly against the wharf. The moonlight softened them all, making them look gentler, almost fragile. A moment later, the clouds parted again, and the moon's glow strengthened, illuminating the breakwater in the distance. The large rocks lining its edge looked silver-tipped, shimmering each time a small wave brushed over them. Then a hush, a deeper silence than before, as though the world itself paused. Even the boats seemed to hold their breath, resting perfectly still in the water. The melody beneath the waves quieted. The breeze faded until even the faint rustle of rope went silent. In that hush, the harbor whispered. This time, the sound was unmistakably clear. A single note, soft, luminous, that echoed across the surface like a bell made of moonlight. Then another note followed, and another. A glow began to ripple through the water, faint and silvery at first, then brighter. Tiny orbs of light appeared beneath the surface, rising slowly like floating pearls. They drifted upward, gathering just below the top layer of the water before breaking through one by one into the open air. The lights hovered there, suspended above the harbor, glowing softly in the moonlight. They weren't bright, not sharp like lanterns, but gentle and warm, like the final embers of a fire drifting on the wind. The whispers swelled again, turning into a soft chorus. The little lights began to move, drifting along the length of the pier, sliding between the boats, weaving gentle paths across the water without disturbing it. Wherever they passed, the water brightened, reflecting pale halos of silver-blue light. It was as if the harbor was remembering something beautiful and retelling it in light. Some of the glowing orbs gathered near the lighthouse, swirling around its base before drifting upward toward the dark glass of the lantern room. For a brief moment, the lighthouse looked as though it had been lit once more, but not by flame, by memory. Others glided toward the open sea, arranging themselves in slow, flowing patterns that resembled constellations. Their reflections shimmered beneath them until the sky and sea looked almost identical, twin worlds connected by light. The whispers shifted again. This time the tone felt softer, slower, like a farewell. One by one, the glowing orbs dimmed. Their light faded into the water, sinking slowly until only the moon remained to illuminate the harbor. The melody quieted. The breeze returned, rushing softly against the pier. The boats rocked again, gently, peacefully. The harbor breathed out long and slow, resting. Whatever it had remembered, whatever story it had whispered, had been told. The moon continued its slow arc across the sky, guiding the hours forward with patient grace. In the windows of the sleeping town, no lamps stirred. No footsteps echoed. Everything remained peaceful, untouched by anything but the sound of the tide. The harbor settled once more into silence, but it was a deeper silence now, content, soothed, complete. And although the whispers faded, falling quiet beneath the surface, the feeling they left lingered in the air. A soft comfort, a gentle warmth, a reminder that even the quietest places hold stories, stories written not in words, but in tides, winds, and moonlight. Tonight, the harbor slept, and it invited the world to sleep with it.